Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are going deep, and I mean deep, into a chronicle of vengeance that is just staggering in its scope.
It really is. We're talking about a story that spans 6 whole centuries.
All focused on one noble family, the Comte and a death sentence that was, well, terrifyingly precise, all rooted in a single terrible act of violence.
And our mission today is really to zero in on that timeline of doom. We want to unpack the final traumatic confrontation that was faced by Antoine, who was the last heir of this very unhappy line.
Right. A man who lived his entire adult life with the absolute unshakable certainty that he could not possibly live past his 32nd birthday.
Exactly. And we're going to trace the history of that curse all the way up to the horrifying final moments when that clock was supposed to run out.
And we have to start with the setting, because you can't understand the story without understanding the world Antoine lived in. The physical decay of his home, the chateau, it's like a map of his family's entire psychological state.
It absolutely is. The Chateau of the Comte d'Essai, it's not just some building in the background. It is, for all intents and purposes, a central character in this whole chronicle.
Describe it for us. Where is it? What did it used to be?
Okay, so you have to picture this. It crowns this big, swelling, grassy summit surrounded by woods. And historically, this place was a beast.
A beast.
I mean, in the feudal ages, you're talking about these lofty battlements, these machicolated parapets.
Okay, what are machicolated parapets?
They're the stone overhangs, with the holes in the floor so you can drop things on anyone trying to attack the walls.
Nasty.
Very. And it made this place one of the most dreaded, most formidable fortresses in all of France.
Mm-hmm.
We're told that kings themselves were defied from those walls. It was a symbol of just absolute unyielding power.
That Chateau Antoine inherited 90 years ago. That was a very different story.
Oh, completely different. It was the total opposite. It was basically a monument to failure, to decay. A story of profound and deep neglect. It just tells this incredibly gloomy tale of fallen grandeur.
The physical state itself tells the story.
It speaks volumes. The ancient turrets are stained. They're crumbling under what the Thorse calls the slow, mighty pressure of time.
And when you look at the details, it's palpable, the tragedy of it all.
It is. You see falling stones from the walls. There's overgrown vegetation just smothering the grounds. The moat is bone dry, just dust. The courtyards are ill-paved and broken.
And that's just the outside. Inside, it's somehow even worse.
It is. We hear about sagging floors, worm-eaten wainscots.
Which is that decorative wood paneling on the walls.
Exactly. Just rotting from the damp. And the tapestries. These huge ancestral tapestries are so faded, you can barely even make out the scenes depicted on them.
So out of this whole massive fortress, how much was actually livable?
Just one single tower. That's it. This family was essentially living inside the massive corpse of a castle.
So what does that tell us? What does that physical state say about the family's emotional state, the economic state?
Well, that's the crucial point, isn't it? It's this deep split between their material poverty and their, for lack of a better word, spiritual pride.
They had nothing left but the name.
Pretty much. The source material notes they were facing a level of poverty that was barely above, and I'm quoting here, dire want. But that was coupled with this absolutely blinding pride in their name and their ancestry.
And that pride, that almost fatal arrogance, that seems to be the thread that ties the very beginning of the curse all the way to Antoine's misery in the present.
It's the root cause of everything. They could have found a way out. They could have, engaged in commercial life, gotten into practical trades.
But that was beneath them.
In their eyes, absolutely. Their noble birth forbade it. They genuinely preferred the glorious decay, the slow ruin of their ancestral home, to what they saw as the potential dishonor of earning a living like a common person.
They chose ruin over adaptation.
Perfectly put. This rigid feudal mindset, this complete inability to change with the times, it basically guaranteed that the centuries-long vendetta that was coming for them would succeed.
That failure to adapt is a tremendous insight. Okay, so let's unpack Antoine himself. He's born into this world of profound decay in one of those gloomy chambers in that last remaining tower. And his life starts with a tragedy that just perfectly foreshadows his entire destiny.
His start in life was just devastating. I mean, his father was killed a month before Antoine was even born. And get this, he was 32 years old.
The same age.
The exact age. Killed by a falling stone that was dislodged from one of the castle's own abandoned parapets. The castle itself killed him.
Wow. And his mother?
His mother died giving birth to him, so he never knew either of his parents. He inherited title, the decay, and that's it.
So who raised him?
His care fell to the sole remaining trusted servitor, an old man named Pierre. And Antoine was an only child, and this lack of companionship was immediately enforced. It was mandated isolation.
What do you mean mandated?
Pierre strictly, and I mean strictly, kept him away from any of the peasant children who live in the plains below the castle.
And what was the reason he gave?
The official reason Pierre gave the boy was his noble birth. That Antoine's high station simply placed him above what he called plebeian company.
So there's that crippling, archaic pride again.
Right, but the real motive, as we learned later, was, well, it was much more frantic and dark.
Pierre was trying to keep the secret from him.
Exactly. He was trying to keep the secret of the family's doom from Antoine's ears. The simple tenantry, the peasants, they were all talking about it. Every night, in hushed, fearful tones, they discussed the curse hanging over the Comte de C.
And Pierre, this loyal guardian, was just desperately trying to shield the boy from this terrifying knowledge.
He was. He was terrified of the psychological toll it would take on him.
The isolation itself had its own devastating psychological effect anyway, didn't it? I mean, he was thrown entirely on his own resources.
Absolutely. The text says Antoine developed a deep, abiding melancholy. His only companions were the shadow-haunted library and the ancient books within it.
And what was he reading?
Well, that's what's so telling. His studies focused intensely on everything that partook of the dark and occult in nature.
So he wasn't reading philosophy or, history.
No, not at all.
He was reading these really dark texts, demonological, alchemical stuff. He was basically, without knowing it, self-grooming for a confrontation with something impossible.
And his environment was the perfect incubator for that kind of mind. The spectral woods around the castle, the crumbling, shadow-ridden walls. It all pushed his mind toward these grim, metaphysical questions.
So even though Pierre was silent, Antoine started to piece things together.
He did, especially as old Pierre's mind began to falter as he got older.
Yeah.
Antoine began to overhear fragments of conversations, whispers.
And he noticed the pattern of early deaths in his family portraits.
Yes. At first, he tried to rationalize it. He called it a natural attribute of a family of short-lived men. But those disconnected fragments he heard from Pierre, they started to connect to what he called a certain circumstance, which had always seemed strange, but which now became dimly terrible.
The truth was unavoidable.
Completely. And it was delivered, formally, on his 21st birthday. Pierre handed him the family document, this chronicle passed down through all the generations, detailing their doom.
And the content of that document, it confirmed his absolute gravest fears, didn't it?
It did. It wasn't a vague warning. It was a precise, terrifying sentence. It confirmed a curse that prevented any holder of the title from exceeding the span of 32 years.
And this is where his earlier reading all that occult stuff really matters.
Critically so. His belief in the supernatural was, and this is a quote, firm and deep-seated. He didn't have a modern, skeptical mind that could just reject this as superstition or folklore.
He took it completely seriously.
He absorbed it as an imminent, undeniable scientific truth.
Which means on his 21st birthday, the day he should have been celebrating his future, he was instead given a ticking clock.
An 11-year countdown, at most. He inherited the absolute certainty of his own doom.
That is the ultimate trauma. I mean, can you imagine knowing the date of your death for over a decade? Knowing every single one of your ancestors in that role died early because of some ancient specific hatred.
It's almost impossible to get your head around.
Okay, so that psychological damage, that sets the stage. But we have to understand why. Why did this all begin? We need to go back 6 centuries to the 13th century when that chateau was still an impregnable fortress.
Right. And we need to meet the original antagonists.
Who were they?
We meet two figures of immense and very dark knowledge. First, there's a man named Michel Mauvais.
Which literally translates to Michael the Evil.
Exactly. Not a subtle name. He was a peasant, but he was highly learned. He was focused on things like the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of eternal life. The source says he was wise in the terrible secrets of black magic and alchemy.
And the text paints him as just pure darkness.
Absolutely. There were rumors he sacrificed his own wife, that he burned her alive, and anytime local peasant children disappeared, their disappearances were laid at his door. This is a genuinely sinister figure in the community.
And he had a son.
He did. A son named Charles, who was very quickly given the nickname Le Sorcier.
The Wizard.
The Wizard. And he was just as proficient as his father in these hidden arts. But what's tragic, and what really fuels this entire 6th century conflict, is the one redeeming human trait they seem to share.
What was that?
The Chronicle calls it a more than filial affection. They loved each other fiercely.
And this intense, passionate family love gets twisted into the mechanism for this eternal hatred.
Precisely. And the trigger for the curse is the vanishing of a child. Young Godfrey, the son of the reigning Comte Henri, he disappears, and the entire castle is just thrown into confusion.
And how does the Comte, the father, react?
Poorly. He is immediately seized by what is described as an ungoverned madness of fury and despair. He's blind with grief. He leads a search party himself. They invade Michelle's lowly cottage, and they find the old wizard busy over a huge, violently boiling cauldron.
And this is the fatal mistake.
The fatal mistake. Without certain cause, without any proof that Michel had anything to do with his son's disappearance, Comte Henri lays hands on Michel Mauvais and brutally murders him right there on the spot.
It's an act of total, futile, uncontrolled violence.
It is, and the irony. The irony arrives almost immediately. While Henri is committing this vengeful murder back at the castle, joyful servants are shouting that young Godfrey has been found.
He was safe the whole time.
Safe the whole time. He'd wandered into a distant, unused chamber of the castle and fallen asleep. Michel Mauvais was killed in utter, terrible vain.
So Henri and his men are leaving the cottage. They're confronted by this terrible mistake they've just made, and that's when Charles Le Sorcier appears.
Yes. He emerges from the trees, and this sequence is just crucial for understanding Charles's character. He hears the excited chatter from the men. He understands immediately that his father is dead, and yet he appears, at first, unmoved.
That's chilling.
It is. This isn't an outburst of grief. This is cold, calculated control being applied to an impossible trauma. He has the presence of mind to process it and in that same instant plot the most devastating revenge imaginable.
He advances slowly on Comte Henri.
And he delivers this chilling, rhyming curse that will define the fate of the House of C for the next 600 years. He says, "May ne'er a noble of thy murderous line survive to reach a greater age than thine."
And he doesn't just leave it at that. The threat is carried out immediately.
Terrifyingly efficient. Charles leaps backward into the black wood. He pulls a phial of colorless liquid from his tunic, and he throws it directly into Comte Henri's face.
The Comte dies instantly. The text says without utterance, and he had lived but little more than 32 years from the hour of his birth.
It's precise. It's lethal. And the precedent for 600 years of murder is set in stone in that moment.
And Charles Le Sorcier.
He just disappears. Vanishes. Relentless bands of peasants search for him for weeks, but he's just gone. He's achieved his first act of revenge and secured his escape.
Which brings us to the ominous chronicle itself, how the curse was maintained. Because the most chilling detail to me is that the family, in the immediate aftermath, they forgot the specific details of the curse.
They did, because the source of it, Charles, had vanished. The immediate terror faded over a generation or two, until the pattern.
The pattern became impossible to ignore.
It was established with what I can only describe as mechanical precision. Godfrey, the innocent child whose disappearance caused the whole tragedy, he becomes the new Comte.
And what happens to him?
He's killed by an arrow while he's out hunting, precisely at the age of 32.
But the family just saw it as a tragic accident.
At first, yes, tragic bad luck, not the fulfillment of a curse. But then the deaths continued. Robert, who was the next young Comte, was found dead in a nearby field from no apparent cause.
And by that point, the whispers had started again.
They had. The memory had been revived. And people noted Robert had just passed his 32nd birthday. Then Louis, Robert's son, was found drowned in the moat at the same fateful age.
The deaths were just too frequent, too precise in their timing.
And too often, they lacked a natural explanation. It just couldn't be a coincidence anymore.
You have to analyze the psychological pressure this would have created across those 6 centuries. The documents are being passed down, confirming the doom, but imagine the attempts to rationalize it.
Oh, for generations, they must have desperately sought some other explanation. A family flaw, a genetic disposition, anything to avoid accepting the supernatural horror of it all.
And that inability to rationalize, combined with their paralyzing pride.
It meant they couldn't escape. They were trapped. Trapped in the decaying fortress, unable to leave for commercial pursuits, and completely unable to fight what they thought was a ghost or a spell.
So this cycle of early violent death just continues. Henriels, Roberts, Antoine, one after the other, down through the centuries, snatched from their lives right around the age of 32.
And that is the lineage that Antoine inherits. So at age 21, when he read that document, he was confronted not just with his own deaths, but with a highly specific expiration date.
At most, 11 years left of existence.
Then that certainty, it changes everything about how he decides to spend those years. He completely rejects modern science, which, had made no impression on him in his isolated, occult-focused life.
Instead, he goes down the path of his ancestor's murderer.
He does. He immerses himself in demonological and alchemical learning.
But he wasn't studying to become an alchemist himself. He was. He was looking for a counterspell, wasn't he?
Desperately. He was trying to fight the curse on its own terms. He was looking for any known method to break or reverse a magical vendetta, studying the very same principles of black magic that Michelle and Charles had mastered.
He's operating under the assumption that a curse is a magical act, and so it can be nullified by another magical act.
Exactly. But he did maintain a sliver of rationality. The source notes he made a very careful inquiry into whether there were no known descendants of the alchemist.
And finding none just pushed him right back into his occult studies.
It did. And in this desperate context, he makes a critical decision. A decision that is both incredibly noble and utterly tragic.
He swore never to wed.
Yes. Since there were no other branches of the family, he was determined to end the cursed line with himself. He would not allow another generation to suffer this fate.
He sacrificed his entire potential future, his lineage, to protect a child that would never exist.
The personal cost was immense. As he got closer to 30, his one and only human connection, old Pierre, died.
And Antoine buried him alone.
Alone. Beneath the stones of the courtyard. He was now utterly, completely alone. The last noble, the last human being, inhabiting this vast, crumbling fortress.
And this marked a profound psychological shift in him.
It did. His mind ceased its vain protest against the impending doom. It says he became almost reconciled to the fate that had met so many of his ancestors. He accepted that he was going to die.
But he resolved not to be a cowardly or a passive victim.
No. He begins to actively explore the ruined, abandoned halls and towers that fear had previously caused him to shun.
He's seeking out the darkness, maybe hoping to find the source of the magic before the magic could find him.
I think so. I mean, these were areas of the castle that hadn't been trodden by a human foot for over 4 centuries. He's finding strange, awesome objects, furniture just crumbling from the damp, cobwebs as thick as netting, huge, bony bats in the gloom. He is performing a deep dive into the very architecture of his own fear.
Okay, so now the clock is truly winding down. We're at the wick of destiny. Antoine, knowing the fatal hours approaching, is keeping a most careful record of his own age, down to the days and hours.
I can't imagine a more intense psychological torture. He knows that most of his ancestors were taken shortly before reaching the exact age of Comte Henri, so he has to be constantly vigilant.
So he applies himself with new vigor to exploring the chateau. He's running out of time.
He is. And it's less than a week before that final, fatal hour that he embarks on his longest and final excursion. He's exhausted the upper levels, so now he descends into one of the most dilapidated ancient turrets, looking for hidden lower levels.
And what does he find?
He descends into what looks like an old storage or confinement area. He's slowly moving through this dark, damp, what the text calls a nitre-encrusted passageway.
Nitre-encrusted.
It means the walls are coated in these white, salty mineral deposits from centuries of moisture. It's foul, it's dark, it is utterly abandoned.
And he reaches a dead end.
He does. He turns to go back, and that's when he catches a detail that changes everything. A small trapdoor with an iron ring lying directly beneath his feet in the stone floor.
And the discovery itself is tense.
Very. He has to raise it with difficulty, and it reveals this black aperture that exhales what are called noxious fumes that cause his torch to sputter and almost go out. He has to light his second, fresh torch and begins to descend down these stone steps that lead far, far underground.
He's found something that was intentionally hidden.
No doubt. And this labyrinth is extensive. It leads to a long, narrow, stone-flagged passage, which finally ends at a massive oaken door.
And the door is...
It's dripping with moisture, and it's so stout that it resists all his attempts to open it. It feels like the entrance to the lair of the beast itself.
So he gives up.
He exhausts himself trying to force it, and finally he turns back toward the steps, defeated. He thinks he's just found a long-abandoned storage space. And this is the precise moment of maximum vulnerability.
And maximum shock.
Because he's in a place he believed has been deserted for centuries, deep underground. And without any warning, he hears the massive, heavy oaken door behind him creak slowly open upon its rusted hinges.
The source material says his immediate sensations are incapable of analysis.
And how could they be? To be confronted with evidence of another person or a spirit in that desolate solitude, it produces a horror of the most acute description. All his supernatural dread just became a tangible, immediate threat.
When he finally forces himself to turn around, he faces the confrontation. And the figure standing in that ancient Gothic doorway is, well, it's spectral in its appearance, but it's undeniably present and horrifyingly real.
We have to detail this figure.
Sure.
It's a man, and he's clad in a skull cap and a long, dark medieval tunic, which is already a huge signal of antiquity.
And his appearance.
His long hair and his flowing beard are of this intense, terrible black color and incredible profusion. It suggests centuries of uninterrupted growth. His body shows the signs of a long, unnatural existence. His forehead is impossibly high. His cheeks are deep sunken and heavily lined with wrinkles. His hands are long, claw-like, and gnarled, and his skin on his face and hands is of a deathly, marble-like whiteness. He's skeletal, almost lost in the voluminous folds of his clothing.
But it's the eyes. It always comes down to the eyes.
Always. They're described as twin caves of abysmal blackness, but they show a profound expression of understanding, meaning they are intelligent, yet they are inhuman in their degree of wickedness. They pierce Antoine's soul with a concentrated generational hatred.
And Antoine is just rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the sheer malice radiating from this creature.
This is not a ghost he can exorcise. This is an intelligent, focused adversary who has emerged specifically for this moment to end the last of the comps.
And then the figure speaks.
Yes, in a rumbling voice that chills Antoine through with its dull hollowness and latent malevolence. And the language it uses is significant. It's the debased form of Latin used by alchemists and demonologists.
A language Antoine only knows because of his own desperate occult studies.
Right. He can understand his own executioner. And what he hears is this deliberate, cruel monologue. It's designed to maximize Antoine's terror in the moments just before his death.
The figure gloats.
Immediately. Gloats over the curse that has hung over the house of Sia, reminding Antoine of his coming end and of the ancient wrong done to Michel Mauvais. And then he starts detailing his methods.
Confirming Antoine's darkest fears, that the curse was never just supernatural, it was physical, maintained by a living intelligence.
He tells how Charles Le Sorcier escaped that first night, but later returned secretly. He admits to killing Godfrey, the heir, with an arrow from the woods, timing it perfectly to the age his father had been at his assassination.
And then he reveals how he established himself, unknown to anyone, in this very deserted subterranean chamber.
And the terror just keeps building. He admits he was the one who seized Robert, Godfrey's son, in a field, that he forced poison down his throat and left him to die at the age of 32. The meticulous, patient precision required to track and murder successive generations across 6 centuries while living secretly beneath their own decaying fortress. It's just staggering.
But then the figure shifts the focus. He addresses the greatest mystery of all.
The one question that has no logical answer. How the curse had been fulfilled when Charles Le Sorcier himself should have died centuries ago.
And this is the moment of revelation.
It is. The figure launches into an account of the deep alchemical studies of both his father and himself, speaking specifically of Charles Le Sorcier's research into the elixir which should grant to him who partook of it eternal life in youth.
So Antoine realizes, in that moment of paralyzing fear, the source of the curse wasn't just a magical spell that lasted 600 years.
It was an individual who had cheated mortality for the sole purpose of ensuring this vendetta persisted through every single generation.
The ultimate achievement of alchemy, eternal life, was twisted into the ultimate tool of hatred.
And the monologue ends abruptly. The figure's fiendish glare returns, and with a sound like the hissing of a serpent, he raises a glass phial.
He's preparing to mimic the original assassination.
Exactly. He's intending to end Antoine's life with poison, just as he had done to Comte Henri 6 centuries prior. It's pure theater, designed to maximize the terror and the history of the moment.
But Antoine's survival instinct finally kicks in.
It overrides the paralysis of fear. He acts instantly, flinging his now-dying torch directly at the creature.
And the phial shatters.
It breaks harmlessly against the stones of the passage. The murder is thwarted, but the immediate threat is not over yet.
Because the torch ignites the figure's medieval tunic.
Yes, and the whole scene is suddenly lit with this ghastly radiance, and the would-be assassin emits a shriek. But it's a shriek of fright and impotent malice. It's not the sound of a terrifying wizard. It's the sound of a trapped, burning man.
And that shriek, combined with the extreme shock of the confrontation, it's too much for Antoine.
It proves too much for his nerves. He collapses prone upon the slimy floor in a total faint. The long psychological countdown has culminated in this violent, messy, physical confrontation.
When Antoine's senses return, it's dark, but his mind is racing.
Curiosity overrides his fear. The dread that has defined his entire life it's lifted. He realizes he has finally confronted and possibly defeated the immediate source of all his danger.
He's desperate to know the full secret.
The full secret of the sinister thing which had haunted my line for centuries. He lights his unused second torch, and the new light reveals the immediate result. The blackened, distorted form of the mysterious stranger. The hideous eyes are finally closed.
So Antoine moves past the body and enters the chamber beyond the Gothic door, and he finds what is clearly an alchemist's laboratory.
And suddenly, the logistics of this 6th century vendetta are laid bare.
He finds immense wealth.
Immense. It dwarfs the decay of his own family's castle. In one corner, there's an immense pile of a shining yellow metal that sparkled gorgeously. Antoine notes it may have been gold, or perhaps something more, but he's too affected by the ordeal to examine it closely.
And the chamber also reveals the logistical key to the whole thing, doesn't it?
It does. There's an opening at the farther end that leads out into one of the wild ravines of the dark hillside forest. This was the assassin's entry and exit point. The mechanism by which he had secretly gotten in and out of the supposedly deserted castle for centuries to enact his murders.
But as Antoine prepares to leave, he hears a sound from the charred figure.
Yes, life is not wholly extinct. The horrifying eyes open wide again, flashing with that same malevolence. The cracked lips try to frame words. Antoine catches the name Charles Le Sorcier and the words years and curse.
But the speech is disconnected. He doesn't understand the full meaning yet.
Not yet. And at his confusion, the pitchy eyes flash malevolently one last time. And then in one final terrifying burst of strength, the wretch raises his hideous head from the damp pavement. This is the moment of definitive, absolute truth.
He finds his voice.
He finds his voice and he screams the words that will forever haunt Antoine's days and nights. Fool, have you no brain whereby you may recognize the will which has through 6 long centuries fulfilled the dreadful curse upon your house? Have I not told you of the great elixir of eternal life? Know you not how the secret of alchemy was solved? I tell you, it is I, that have lived for 600 years to maintain my revenge. For I am Charles Le Sorcier.
Wow. The genius of that reveal is the ultimate inversion of the supernatural. The curse was never a powerful, untouchable spell.
It was the result of a single, deeply, profoundly vengeful man who achieved immortality. He became his own curse.
He achieved the ultimate alchemical goal, the elixir of eternal life and youth, but he dedicated his infinite existence not to knowledge or exploration or peace,
but to a singular, generational vendetta. He meticulously hunted and murdered every single noble heir, precisely when they reached the age of 32. It makes him the world's most focused and certainly the longest-lived serial killer.
And the implication for Antoine is immediate and profound.
The dread is lifted. The curse, as a supernatural fate, never existed. His enemy was a tangible burning man who is now dead. Antoine survived the fatal hour because he recognized the assassin, threw the torch, and broke the line of violence.
But the existential question raised by Charles Le Sorcier's choice is just staggering. What does it mean for a person to achieve immortality, the ultimate prize, only to use that endless existence as a tool for a singular, unending revenge?
It suggests a soul that was so utterly consumed by bitterness and hatred that the purpose of eternal existence became entirely secondary to the act of killing. He traded wisdom, peace, and life itself for 600 years of meticulous secret murder. He turned the key to eternal youth into a meticulously maintained murder calendar.
So what about the final fate of Antoine the Survivor?
Well, according to the source, he is now 90 years old. He ended the direct threat, but he made that secondary resolution all those years ago, to never wed. He was determined to end the cursed line with himself.
So he achieved physical freedom by destroying the threat, but did he ever truly achieve psychological freedom?
That's the question, isn't it? He kept his vow. The decades of isolation, the certainty of doom, the weight of his family's pride. It all shaped his life for so long that even defeating the monster didn't change his course. The centuries of inherited trauma prevented him from truly living, even after the source of that curse was dead.
And we are left with that massive pile of shining yellow metal, sparkling in the light of Antoine's torch, left untouched in Charles Le Sorcier's abandoned laboratory.
Was it just gold, accumulated over centuries of alchemical work? Or was it the Philosopher's Stone, the other great goal of the alchemist that grants untold wealth? Charles achieved eternal life. That secret died with him in the fire.
But think about the knowledge that was lost forever in that laboratory.
Exactly. What other profound alchemical secrets? What other dark or miraculous knowledge of the universe was contained in those notes, in those books? What wisdom or what terror went up in smoke when that flame took the 6th century wizard?
It raises a powerful question for you, the listener. If you found a hidden laboratory capable of granting eternal life, would you use it to seek wisdom and freedom? Or would you dedicate your endless existence to satisfying a single, ancient, burning rage? Charles Le Sorcier made his choice, and he defined his own immortality entirely by revenge. It's a terrifying testament to the destructive power of malice.